are listening
welcome
to
Star
the
Bears.
Mindful
I'm Chris
Mentor.
T. Gordon.
Bree Gordon.
Hey, Bree, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to step on your toes there. Why don't you go first?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, thank you. And Chris, an excellent last name, by the way. I think we landed on both ending with Gordon. Really cool.
Yes.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to go first. You are listening to The Mindful Mentor. I'm your host, Bree Gordon, and
I'm Chris D.T. Gordon, welcoming you to Scar Bearers. That's right, folks. We are doing a twofer. Bree and I met each other and found out, besides our awesome last names, that we have fun just talking off the cuff and being a little spontaneous. So we're going to do a twofer episode here where fans and viewers and audience members of the Mindful Mentor will hear me, and then the audience members of Scar Bearers will hear Bree. Wow, I'm even a poet now. I wasn't aware of that till now.
Wow, beautiful job. Excellent intro. I am so excited, and great idea, Chris. I love the creativity of bringing both of our messages together, having a conversation around this. So I'm really excited for today. Thanks again for reaching out.
Definitely. Thank you for responding.
My pleasure. So I did notice, actually, we have a mutual friend on Facebook in Jesse Cruz, who's also been interviewed on the Mindful Mentor before to share his story. He and I went to high school together.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. And I love the community that we find online too, of just people who are out there sharing their story, not only kind of coming to a place where they're comfortable with their own story. With the time, we know that before we get to a point of sharing it, we've got to do a lot of work around accepting it for ourselves, but then are using that as a platform for others, which I'm really excited to learn more about you, because I know that is exactly what's led you to where you're at today.
Yes, exactly. It is interesting how many of us have been motivated and inspired to turn our messes into our messages. And I think especially now, as we're nearing 2 years into this pandemic that everyone is facing on some level, that we're finding that our messes are more valuable and more needed than ever, because everyone is experiencing the same thing, but at different levels. And who knows whose voice will strike the strongest into someone's heart.
That's so true. And I feel like how I've come to so many things in my own journey is, quite honestly, listening to podcasts, reading. Self-help is kind of I don't know if we're still using the term self-help book, but you know what I mean by that. Those personal development books, going to see speakers. And if I had not had access to someone showing up for themselves and others in that way, I don't know where I'd be at in my personal journey. So I definitely can attest to that for myself as well.
Yes. And I think that's a great segue into the first part of our session here. Bree, why don't you go ahead and share your story and let us know what has brought you here?
Yeah, for sure. So we've got like 3 to 4 hours, right? Is that the time we blocked off for this part?
Becky's gonna, my wife is, she hired a babysitter, and she's gonna have them watch the kids while we go ahead and chat. Yeah,
just perfect. I'm just teasing. I won't take up that much time, I promise. No, I appreciate the opportunity to share always. I grew up in a very small town, originally from outside of Toronto, and moved to the States with my mom when I was young. Grew up an only child, and of a single parent, hardworking. And so my mom worked in a nursing home, and I would go to work with her as a young kiddo, and would be comfortable from the age of 3, she tells me, I don't really remember this, holding court really in a nursing home, singing Broadway songs and performing. And I really didn't realize till I got older what a gift that was, to be able to connect intergenerationally and to not be afraid of people that were different from me or different ages. And so that really led to my career as a music therapist, which I've practiced for the last 13 years. And through my work, which primarily has taken place working in hospice care, working with seniors with neurodegenerative disorders. And now more recently, in the last few years, I've worked as a trauma-informed therapist. So I've worked with survivors of gun violence. I've worked with the students, the Stoneman Douglas community, individuals who have survived the Holocaust, survivors of childhood trauma, active duty war veterans. And through that work, through using music to help others express, connect, form community, feel like they can create a space where they feel successful, feel proud of themselves, and get more in touch with their feelings, I've been able to get more in touch with my own and how my beginnings of surviving some childhood trauma along the way, some complicated loss, grief of my father at a very young age, how all of those things have led me to where I'm at today, have led me to have the empathy that I have when I'm working with my clients, given me the openness and awareness that, one, would be different if I hadn't experienced it, but two, would also be different if I never faced those things in myself and just always kept moving forward without taking stock in that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So if you don't mind me going back a bit, I was going to start asking, what is music therapy and how you found yourself in that, in that career path. But I do want to go back even farther and just ask a little bit about your father. What had happened there?
Sure, absolutely. So he was 44 when he passed away. And there was heart disease involved and just a lot of poor health choices, to be honest. And part of that is that, and most branches of my family tree, there is addiction in my family. And so that is something that I didn't really obviously understand as a child. And when I grew to be older and my practice started working in a lot of addiction recovery communities, facilities, I avoided it like the plague. I don't want to get too close to that. As a therapist, just very afraid of transference. Yeah. And through the last 2 years with COVID, that has been a primary area of which my business has been working in a lot, because a lot of folks, fortunately, are going to rehab. Unfortunately, are faced with this choice right now. There's a lot of people who have been living healthy lives, going to meetings, been doing so well in their recovery for so long, and then suddenly lost their job. We're stuck inside the house, weren't being held accountable for their actions, weren't having access to meetings. So I have learned so much about myself, my family, my dad, my, other members of my family who have struggled with this, friends, through working in this community and working alongside these individuals as they work their steps. And so that's kind of answering both of your questions at once, what the journey was like personally for me, but also how I've been able to use my career as a music therapist to help these individuals who really aren't always comfortable processing and talking verbally with a traditional talk therapist. I mean, that's not exclusive to those in recovery. That's pretty much most people, especially if you've never had access to talk therapy before or been down that path, but you can find yourself in the lyrics of a familiar song or writing new lyrics, writing poetry, putting a playlist together, sharing music for someone else when you're not able to share a verbal message with them of how you want to communicate. So it's been an awesome way to kind of bridge those two worlds.
So at what point do you say, you know what? I like the song. I bet I could heal people with it. Where do you find yourself saying, I'm going to become a music therapist?
Yeah. Well, first of all, to just go back to the first thing that you said there, it's not about me finding the song and healing anybody with it. It's about guiding them to find the music.
I was being a little flippant, but yeah.
Sure. Absolutely.
I know.
Well, you know what? It's not that uncommon for me to be asked the question of like, what music is therapeutic? Like, what song can I listen to and I am healed? This is amazing, and it's completely everything that I do is patient preferred. So you have to find it. And that can be so surprisingly different for each person. But to get to the point where I realize that's what I wanted to do as a career. I knew I didn't want to be a music teacher. I love my music teachers. I wouldn't be where I am today without some phenomenal music educators and private teachers along the way. But I knew that wasn't my calling. And for a while, I thought my path would be to go into classical performance and opera, and again, really noble. And I'm so proud of my friends that have gone that path. And I certainly appreciate going to musical performances, but I knew I couldn't do that. I knew I couldn't spend my life with auditioning. And so the idea that there is such a thing, such a degree, a field, a certification, a career made out of using music to help others was absolutely the best fit.
What instrument did you play, or do you play?
My primary is voice. So I studied classical voice, jazz and opera, musical theater. And then my secondary is guitar, because that's primarily what I use to accompany myself in sessions. So, and it's the most easiest to transport, don't always have access. Like today, I did rounding on an oncology unit in the infusion suite, from room to room. I can't bring a piano to do that, right?
That could be a little difficult,
Yeah, it's not very therapeutic really to clunk that around down the hallway. So being able to transport myself as a vocalist and a guitar is a lot simpler. So those are probably the two biggest, most common instruments that I use day to day.
Okay. All right. And
yeah.
So pretend, I don't want to say pretend, but I guess we will, because I want to find myself in the role of one of your patients. So what would it be like for me to experience music therapy?
Wow. Well, that's a cool question to ask. To experience music therapy, well, honestly, you probably experience music therapeutically already, right? Most people do. Most people can connect to the idea of using music for relaxation, using music for motivation, for positive redirection, getting through a traffic jam, putting on your, blasting music for certain emotions, for certain responses that you want to elicit. We all kind of already use that. Now, the difference in experiencing music therapy with a music therapist is that you have a professional there to help you kind of guide through this process. So not only is it using music to achieve non-musical goals, so it really would depend on what you were seeking music therapy for, whether it was for pain relief, for coping, for anxiety, stress management, whether you wanted to have it with your family as an opportunity to have a positive, meaningful interaction with your family, whatever that looked like for you, that would be determine how the session would move forward. And then not only is the music therapist equipped to be able to kind of manipulate music or a music-based intervention to meet those goals, but to help you process through that as well. What came up for you in that moment? And so it's hard to say exactly what you would feel, or what you would experience, but that's why we would want to talk about ahead of time. What are your goals for being for seeking out a music therapist? What would you be looking for as an outcome? And I know that a big part of your story is your medical experience and the time that you spent being in a hospital. So I wonder, did you have a music therapist come visit you while you were going through your medical challenges?
I was fortunate enough to be able to go through my experience without a professional therapist. I had plenty of friends come and visit me, and I was able to go through physical therapy, but I'm almost uncomfortable to say this. I did not have to seek professional therapy because things went so blessedly well. I know that for so many people in my situation, that is not the case.
Sure.
So I didn't, but I do, as you were talking, I was thinking, wow, where would I need that in my journey? And I think probably the one place would be maybe dealing with the ongoing pain that I feel and discomfort in my skin grafts. I have skin grafts that go from the base of my hand all the way through to the base of my neck. and
Mm.
all the way down through under my rib cage and around my back. And I'm not sure if you are familiar with skin grafts.
Not really, no.
They are extremely tight. And I mean, I'm figuratively and literally ripped. Let's put it that way. As you can see, I'm going to try to lift this up here. You see, it's very tight. I mean, it's basically muscle, bone, tendon. There's no fat there, which I know some people are like, lucky, but at the same time, and yeah, it makes great cosplay. You know, I've gone as Wolverine and it looks really well. I call myself a discount Deadpool, in fact. But the downside is they're non-porous. So it's very hot all the time. I have saved a lot of money on deodorant, mind you, because they don't sweat. But it's also, I'm constantly reminded of this.
Sure, absolutely. And just to back up for my audience who's not yet had the pleasure of meeting you and hearing your story, I'm gonna turn it around to you for this time to back up a little bit and just share a little bit about what's brought you to this place in your life.
Certainly. So on March 18th, 2015, I was helping my wife, Becky, get our kids into our van so she could take them to school and daycare. I am a middle school special education teacher for an online school, and I've been doing it since 2012. So I'm pre-pandemic in that area. So I was helping her get our 6-year-old son, Josh, and our twins, who are 2 years old, Seth and Anna, to the van. I picked up Seth and was flying him back and forth to our detached garage, when I went too far to the right and scratched the back of my right hand on my garage wall. It wasn't bleeding, 'tis but a scratch, my Monty Python friends would say. So I put him into the car seat. I kissed them all goodbye. They go on their way. I go back into the house, wash out my superficial wound, and start my day of online teaching. 3 days later, I wake up to find a lacrosse ball-sized bump on my right elbow. I go to the urgent care clinic where the doctor says, well, it might be bursitis, which is an inflammation of the bursa sac in our joints, and to keep an eye on it. So I keep an eye on it as it grew and grew and grew until my right arm was 3 times the size of my left arm. I basically looked like the Incredible Hulk in mid-transformation. But instead of being angry and smashy, I was more sicky and tiredy, very lethargic, very nauseous. So Becky procured a babysitter and she drove me to the emergency room. While they of course admitted me because, hello, huge right arm. But as they were taking my vitals, they found I had also gone septic. So I had poison coursing through my veins because it was trying to kill the infection. I had a ginormous right arm. Not the craziest Saturday night I ever experienced, Bree, but it was quite up there.
It was close, yeah.
Yeah, it was top 5. So they keep me overnight, and in the morning, the doctor said, Mr. Gordon, this is beyond us. We can do nothing more for you here. Where do you want to go? I quickly say Mayo, because not only is it one of the best hospitals in the world, but because Bill and Dee, Becky's parents, live in Rochester, Minnesota, which is 2 hours away from me here in New Ulm, Minnesota. So I'm flown to Rochester, where they officially diagnosed me with necrotizing fasciitis, also known as flesh-eating bacteria. As soon as they find out what they're dealing with, they get to work. They prep me for surgery, and I'm out for 5 days. In that time, they proceed to remove all the infected tissue, which range from that scratch on the back of my right hand, all the way up to the shoulder, through my arm, to the shoulder, to the base of my neck, like I said before, down my rib cage, around and up my back. And then they clean it all out. They have to remove every iota of bacteria, because if even one little bit of that necrotizing fasciitis is still present, the whole process will start over again. And they treated it like a forest fire. So they cut in front of the infection to make sure they got everything out there. However, when they breed and cleaned out that area, they found that the infection had gone so far into my right arm that they were certain they would have to amputate. They even told Becky this. It was a certainty. They were planning on doing it. However, as the second surgery started, the occupational therapist in the surgery saw that I still had hand function. So what they elected to do was extract a 40 centimeter by 10 centimeter flap of skin from my left thigh and place it on my right hand and forearm. And since this is my thigh on my hand, I call this my thand. Copyright pending. Well, this is where I realized, well, this is like when you give a mouse a cookie. When you try to solve one problem, another one presents itself. Because now I have a gaping hole in my left leg. So they then remove the vastus lateralis, which is the outermost quadricep muscle in your thigh, and then install a shoestring contraption connected to two knobs, one on either side of my leg. So and then they would, in time, tighten the wound by tightening the knobs. They'll close the wound over time by tightening the knobs. Well, there's still the case of all that exposed tissue and muscle on the upper right part of my body. So they take a skin graft harvester, or as I like to call it, a cheese slicer on steroids, and run it up and down my back and my thighs so they have enough skin grafts to cover the area. This all happens in that 5-day period. So I wake up, I am high on ketamine. The first thing I thought happened was I was in the bottom of a water slide, being pummeled by green liquid. Turns out I was throwing up CT fluid because of all the scans. My brother, who flew in from Michigan, where we both grew up, was there, as well as Becky and Bill. They kind of give me the idea, give me the layout, the kind of a general lay of the land, what happened, and then they let me go to sleep. Well, I didn't really sleep though. I was awake, kind of in and out of consciousness, and starting to take stock of what life was going to be like moving forward. I call this personal bacteria because it was invading me like that necrotizing fasciitis was. They were negative thoughts that were invading my mind. What was I going to look like when I fully recovered, if I fully recovered? At that point, I was still heavily bandaged on my right side. I could not walk because of my leg. I was a total mess. Was I going to look any better a year from now? What was I going to be able to do with my body? At one point, doctor said I would be lucky to feed myself with my right arm. What was I going to be like mentally? What was my mental state going to be like? What were my relationships going to be like with Becky, with the kids, with my other family members, with my friends, with my colleagues, people on the street? How are we going to survive this financially? Because as it turned out, I am the prize. I am the proud owner of $1 million arm. All of these thoughts were invading my mind. All that personal bacteria was starting to permeate and get into my mindset. Thankfully, though, it didn't have time to stick around because Becky, during one of her daily visits, started telling me about how everyone in our various communities were stepping up to help us out. For example, our neighbors here in New Ulm were shoveling our walkways, snow blowing our driveway, keeping an eye on the house. People in Rochester, where Becky and the kids end up staying for 2 weeks. People were stopping by to drop off clothes and toys and play with the kids because they didn't have hardly anything of their own. My brother, like I said, he flew in from Michigan. The minute he found out what had happened to me, he bought me an iPad so I can have something to entertain myself while I was recovering. And he stayed for a week and a half to help Becky, Bill, Dee, and the kids. A friend of Becky's from high school started a GoFundMe account, which made enough money to cover the lost wages I had incurred from my job because I had missed an entire quarter of school. The entire fourth quarter, I was out of the hospital. I was out in the hospital. When Becky told me all of this, Bree, that personal bacteria washed away. And I was left with what I call the attitude of gratitude, or TAG for short. And I started practicing TAG by asking myself 3 questions. First of all, what good things did I have in my life? And when we ask ourselves that question, we think of the big things: our faith, our family, our friends, our house, our jobs. But then I started thinking about, well, what about the little things? Those things that we seem to overlook, but really bring us that daily dose of joy. For example, like I said, Jeff bought me an iPad. Well, on that iPad, I downloaded Netflix. I started watching the first season of Daredevil. And as you can tell, I'm a little bit of a geek. I got Iron Man behind me. I'm also, I got the Ninja Turtles and Deadpool on my 6. So I love my comic book heroes. And Deadpool really hit the spot. And Daredevil really hit the spot there. Then I thought about how the light never shined, or the sun never shined in my eyes when I was bedridden in my hospital room, which I know sounds very random. But for those of us who've spent an extensive amount of time in one space, bedridden or otherwise, not having to ask someone for one more thing was actually a godsend. And then there's the hospital pizza. Bree, what is your experience with hospital food?
I have only ever been in the hospital once, and that was after I delivered my baby 6.5 months ago. And I think that I was so caught in the moment that I don't really remember much. I'll be honest, but I do know from experience of working in hospitals that the smell isn't always the most appetizing as it rolls down the hallway. Is that accurate to say?
Well, for most people, it is. The pizza at St. Mary's Hospital, where I was recovering, was phenomenal. I don't know if it was because I hadn't had pizza in a while by the time I actually ate it, but man, it tasted so good. It was deep dish. It was like one of those personal pizzas.
I mean, I've heard New York, Chicago, never thrown in the ring. St. Mary's Hospital. Yeah.
At the time, St. Mary's could hold its own against New York and Chicago. And again, maybe as a personal bias because that was all I could have, but man, it tasted so good. And even today, I think of little things that I appreciate. And I share this with my students every day when we meet. I ask them, what are they thankful for? And I'm thankful for my wireless mouse that's held up by duct tape. I'm thankful for door hinges that allow us to walk through walls, essentially. And as I mentioned before, I'm thankful for my right armpit because I've saved so much money on deodorant by only needing one side. And so that was the first step, thinking of all the good things in my life. Then I thought about, who do I appreciate in my life? And, we think of the big groups again, people who share our faith, our family, our friends, our coworkers, our neighbors. But at the time I was in the hospital, so I thought about the medical staff, the doctors and the food service, but especially the nurses. Not only were they professional and kept me alive and helped me on the road to recovery, but many of them became very good friends of mine. And one of them, in fact, back up a bit, when you are in the hospital for a long time, they often put a poster on the wall that says "Getting to know you," and they ask you a bunch of questions. I'm sure you may have seen those, right, Bree? Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the questions they asked on the poster was favorite movie. Well, you look at my room. I'm surrounded by Iron Man and the Ninja Turtles. You heard me quote Monty Python. Of course, I like Star Wars. So you could probably guess what my favorite movie was. That's right, Blazing Saddles.
Oh, obviously, yes.
Yeah, of course. Duh. Well, one day, it's a Monday morning, Chris, the head nurse, practically runs into my hospital room. And she's all fluttered. She's saying, Chris, I was at a garage sale this weekend and I saw this and I thought of you and here it is. She had bought me a DVD copy of Blazing Saddles at a garage sale. I am a part of her job, Bree. I am nothing more than an item on her to-do list. But the fact that she not only recognized that was my favorite movie, but then she went out and bought it and gave it to me, makes that particular DVD copy one of my prized possessions.
Wow.
And I actually created a little 3-step process that can help people increase their appreciation of those around them. So the first step is you think of someone in your social circle. We all have various social circles that we inhabit with others. Take someone out of that social circle that you share with them. Then look at all the positive ways that person affects the world around them on their own, not with any connection to you. And then put that person back into your social circle and just realize and be grateful for the fact that you have this wonderful person in your life. I use Becky, my wife, as an example. Yes, she's my wife, she's my partner, she's my best friend. But when I take her out of that social circle that we share, and I view her on her own merits, she's a fantastic mother. She's a loving daughter and sister. She's a brilliant teacher. She's a well-read historian. She's a great athlete. She's got a sharp wit and is almost as geeky as I am, but she plays it on the down low a lot better than I do. She is a benefit to the community as a whole. Now I put her back into the social circle that we share. And she's still all of those things, but then she's also my wife, my partner, my best friend to boot. How lucky am I?
That's awesome. Wow. And such a great way to expand your view on a person that a person that close to you, certainly a significant other, a partner that often might be taken for granted, right? Or your child or your parent, someone that's so close to you, we don't often look at them with that lens. That's beautiful. And so timely, right? This is what I call our season of gratitude. I work in memory care, as I mentioned earlier, and with seniors who are in skilled nursing and rehab settings that have maybe had a fall and are getting stronger to go back home. So every time we get together through October and November leading up to Thanksgiving, I always play the song, My Favorite Things from Sound of Music, because a lot of them are from New York and our Broadway fans. And I say, during the next 3 to 5 minutes, I just want you to think of one thing or person that you're grateful for. We're going to continue this a couple times a week leading up to Thanksgiving. So I can't wait I go to see them tomorrow morning to try this with them. If you don't mind, if it's okay, if I kind of borrow this and this another way of looking at, yes, we might, be able to say, oh, my son, my child, they love their sons in that group. Every woman in that group says their son, they must have the most amazing sons in the world. It's so sweet. And just to think about, who are these people when they're not just our sons, our partners, our children, our parents, and the influence that they have. I love that as a way to really appreciate someone in a new light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I found that in conversation with people that someone tried to challenge me and say, well, what if there's someone that you don't like? True. There are people we do not care for as much as others in this world. We're not everyone's best friend. But there is someone who loves that person. There is someone who is a beneficiary of that person's good actions. And everyone is worthy of love. They may not be our friends, but they are definitely worthy of love, and they are capable of doing good things. And who knows, if we extend a little kindness toward them, maybe that will turn the corner, and maybe they someday will become our friend.
Absolutely. So much of what you were saying, in a few episodes ago on my podcast, I interviewed my husband, and the gratitude was a primary theme of it, because he actually was hospitalized with COVID the week that I delivered our baby. Yeah. And we had done all the things, right? As people tend to say. I started working from home my last few weeks. My stepson was doing online classes the last few weeks. My husband was just working in his office and not with clients the last few weeks, all in preparation for having a safe, healthy delivery with no COVID exposure. And, great. Isn't that nice when you just shout your plans into the universe and say, here we go. This is exactly what's going to happen, how I planned it. And, perfectly healthy on paper, no pre-existing conditions, all of the things. And he did end up in the hospital and had the remdesivir and the antibodies and all the treatment. And had it hadn't been the 2 weeks out, but had the vaccine, and the doctors had shared with him that they thought that was very helpful in his recovery. And all that to say, literally came down to the day of scheduling. Okay, well, when's the last time I can move this C-section to? Because I just want to make sure that he can get from this hospital to that hospital. Literally talking to infectious disease doctors from multiple hospitals. When is he clear to move from here to there, just to be there for our child to be born? And there was like a day or two in between when he got cleared, was no longer contagious, was healthy, thank God, left the hospital. I could push my surgery so that he had a few days home. And I took him to the beach to sit on a bench after my pre-op, appointments, paperwork, and all that before I went into the hospital. And and my husband's not a terribly ethereal person. I love him to death, but he's very like sports and financial things and very like in the moment, kind of likes to watch things as they're unfolding, but also with a lot of things going on at once. Not often do I catch him just slowing down and taking stock in the wind blowing and the birds up ahead. And it was so incredible that he just was, I've never seen a bird formation like that. I've never tasted something like this before. I've never smelled the air like this before. The gratitude he had, not only for coming out of the hospital and being well, and he'd never been scared like that before, right? As many people haven't. No one knew what was going on the last 2 years. Yeah. But then to be walking into a situation of becoming a parent, again, for him, first time parent for me. And then for me to share with him, hey, I just want to show you all the people that have reached out to me this last week, that I've been 9 months pregnant at home and you've been in the hospital. Your boss has sent flowers, all of your frat brothers from college have sent me meals. Someone came over to fix the air conditioner. Someone else came over to do this, to do that. There's been food at my door every single day that you've been gone. Mm-hmm. And it just completely gave us such a new perspective. Not that we didn't already appreciate these people in our lives and this role in our lives, but just to be faced with not only his illness being in the hospital, but also the opportunity of nowhere bringing new life into the world. And sandwiched in the middle of that is knowing, wow, do we have some incredible humans around us? How fortunate are we? And, again, I it's not that I would say recommend that scenario, as I'm sure you would say the same of your experience. But yes, wow, did we come out on the other end?
5 stars would not recommend.
Right. Yeah, seriously.
Very low Yelp score there.
Yeah, but to know once you get through it, And everybody's going to have a story like that, right? That I didn't plan it. Certainly didn't think I had the tools to get through it, but I did. And man, the perspective I have on the other end of it is really valuable.
Yes, yes, indeed. And then, and so, yeah, after I thought about who I appreciated, I thought about, well, how am I going to give back? You know, and I really couldn't do much in the hospital. But when I was discharged, that's when I really started taking charge. I would pick up garbage on my runs. I would mow my neighbor's lawn or snow blow their driveway or walkway, or just open the door for people.
Mm.
And Bree, have you, like, in your profession, experienced people who feel like they are not seen?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
You know, we don't know unless someone tells us what people are thinking. And we could guess, we can conjecture, draw, we can create predictions, but we can't know for sure. But just imagine how much someone's day could be a little brighter by having someone just hold a door for someone, to see that person say, hey, you know what? I don't know you, but I recognize you were there. And I'm going to help out in just one little way.
Mm.
And so I really like to play up the notion of holding a door for someone, because you never know what's going on in someone's life. Right now, a friend of mine is having the worst day of her life because her husband passed away from COVID. We don't know what people are facing right now.
Absolutely.
And if we can help out in the smallest way to make their day even a little bit better, it is worth it. And the beautiful thing about all those examples I gave was they cost me nothing, but to the recipient, they could be priceless. And so that's why I have chosen to decide to take my message of TAG and speak to young adults, high schoolers, college students, those in the military, anyone who feels like their battles are too much for them. Or, we know that high schoolers sometimes over dramatize things, but at the same time, we are in a time where the whole world is of one big teenager. It's one huge blow up to the next. And it becomes so much for people that we need to have something to hang on to, something to latch onto, like a lifesaver.
Yeah.
So we can feel safe in one little place. And that's why I love TAG so much, is because we can all look around and find something that we can just take a little bit of joy out of. We can always reach out to someone and say, hey, I appreciated that thing you did yesterday for me, or 5 years ago for me. Yesterday I posted about how one of my first families that I taught, the mom sent me or bought me a beret from the 2002 Winter Olympics. And I wore that for this year's school picture. I have it on my, on my ID, because I like doing that silly stuff. But I thanked her for that. That happened 20 years ago. And she appreciated it so much. And so letting people know why we appreciate them, why they make us smile, or why they make us feel loved. And then giving others a reason to be grateful, which is really the engine of TAG. Because if we keep it to ourselves, take it from someone who's trying to play TAG by himself, it's boring and then a little embarrassing.
I'm an only child. I get it.
Yeah. It's like a dog chasing its own tail. But the more you involve people, the more fun and exciting and beneficial it becomes.
So we all know there's research behind being positive and waking up your day with starting with gratitude, and there's books and books upon it. So I just want to ask you, as someone who is living this mission truly every day, what do you notice in your own life are the tangible physiological benefits of gratitude?
I have not had a truly bad day in years. Yes, there have been events that have happened that were unfortunate. But by looking all around and saying, you know what, I have value for that ottoman. I find value in these light bulbs that create the light that allow me to be seen on this podcast. By being able and to just spout off something I am thankful. I am thankful for this beaten up graphic novel of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that I showed my students today because I wanted to show them that the Ninja Turtles were actually a parody of Daredevil. I love this graphic novel. I find value in it. By finding value in our everyday possessions and in our relationships, we find that we are more wealthy than we could have ever imagined. Not because of the cost of those items, but by the value of them.
Oh, well, yeah. And I think how you evaluate, I think depends on where you're at that day too, right? And sometimes we discard things or we let things become nuisances, and that's totally through our lens of where we're coming through. If we wake up and say, you mentioned I've not had a bad day, well, so much of that is sometimes just wake up and deciding I'm having a good day. Right? So it's such a conscious, intentional choice that needs to be made to find that value you speak of.
Yes.
I love that.
I find that I am not a better person than anyone else for this viewpoint. I am a better person than myself. And that's all I aim to be, is I want to be a better person than I was yesterday. And by having this mindset of gratitude, it helps me by motivating my search for what is good and what I could appreciate more. And by extension, help others do the same.
It's awesome. I love it. And it's simple, right? I mean, like I said, it's a conscious choice. You have to make it. You have to be active in it. You can't just passively live a life of gratitude every moment, for sure. But I noticed, like, on your website, and in a second, we'll kind of give an opportunity to share information so people can check all this great stuff out. But you have like a one-page sheet, right, that you encourage people to print out and just keep visible, just as a reminder, a visual reminder to engage in this.
Yes, because like I said before, life is crazy. There are, something new is out there to grab the headlines, to make us say, whoa, I should pay attention to that. And 9 times out of 10, it's a negative thing. I mean, that's why the media is so powerful, because it uses that sensationalism. If it bleeds, it leads. So we are inundated by negativity. But by choosing, as you said, to pick a few things that you find positive or you are grateful for in your life every day, you can strengthen that positivity mindset within yourself and just become a better person and more resilient, not only to the things happening to you, but the things happening around you that might influence you.
Yeah, absolutely. And to take this to, because I love multi-sensory approaches to kind of grounding ourselves to ideas. So, it's the visual component, maybe saying it out loud or writing it down. But just as the music therapist, I think just even making a gratitude playlist, like something that are songs that remind you of people or remind you of these situations you're thankful for. And just, hey, when you need that, you need your cup to be filled up, and reminder of these things that you really have a value in your life, and just put that on and just give it, 30 minutes in the car ride of connecting that feeling. It's, like I said, something I'm trying to connect my clients to definitely through this time, but it's not just a November thing. This can be a 365 days a year thing, and it should be.
And even on those leap days, once every 4 years.
I am so sorry I left those out. I apologize.
February 29th needs some love too.
I love it. So I know that we're sharing and we're kind of going back and forth, but I do have a question I always ask on my podcast. So can I start to wind us down with a question for you?
Certainly.
All right. So, Mindful Mentor, the goal that I want to achieve on this show is that, as I mentioned, the value in sharing story, that we are always constantly mutually mentoring each other. We are always constantly giving wisdom and receiving wisdom in every interaction we have, every conversation we have. So, I would love to know for you, what is a mentorship moment that stands out most? Maybe a time someone was a mentor to you, or that you were a mentor to someone else.
It's quite interesting that you asked me that question, Bree, because it happened 3 days ago. I participated in my final test for my black belt in Taekwondo.
Oh, awesome.
This has been a life goal for me ever since I was silly and quit in high school. I've always thought, I'd like to go back and get my black belt. Well, I found myself in that position on Saturday. And one of the tasks I had to perform was I had to do a blindfolded 360 sidekick, which means you are standing at the ready position. You take a step forward with your left foot, but you spin it around so it's facing the opposite way. And then you turn your body around, and then you kick with your right leg and you break 2 boards, all while blindfolded. Well, I had 4 attempts. The first time I broke one of the boards. The second 2 times I rushed it and I totally whiffed. My master says, trust yourself. You've been practicing this many, many times. You think what you have to do. He's from the Middle East, so he sometimes drops some modifiers and stuff, but you get the gist. Trust your training. Basically what it came down to. And so I took a deep breath. I put down my blindfold. I took the step. I lifted my leg and I smashed those 2 boards.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I learned in a week and a half what I still have to improve upon before I get my black belt. But the test as a whole went well. But that moment of mentorship will always stick with me, because when you have to do that kind of kick in order to break those boards, you have to put yourself out there. You have to stretch your leg farther than you feel comfortable. And when you're blindfolded, you can't see where you're going to land. But you have to trust your training. You have to trust your experience and your hard work in order to follow through and make your goal.
Boom, mic drop. Love it. That's awesome. Wow. And also to go back to you remembering something in your adult life that felt unfinished and not just saying, well, that stunk and I shouldn't have quit that, but going after it as an adult and just smashing the expectations for it. That's so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been tough at times, especially when I am I'm not a teenager anymore, and I'm also a runner, so that makes my legs very tight, and so I have to do a lot more stretching than the normal black belt student would have to. But I set my goal. I set myself up for this goal, and I'm going to succeed.
That's awesome.
And now I have my ending question.
Oh, okay.
Well, I have a 2-parter. First of all, as we have talked about, this is about gratitude. What is an item that you can look upon to have gratitude in the most mundane or surprising of circumstances?
My guitar.
And why is that?
I just truly feel like my guitar is an extension of myself. And while it's my tool for my job, and I don't want to say that my job is my identity, but I do feel very grateful to have a job, to wake up every day and to do something that I love. And not only that it's my tool for my job that I love, that I get to help others and be with others. But when I met my husband's family for the first time, and he's from Michigan as well. And again, I mentioned single parent, only child, had a very small Christmas morning, was like me and mom, like, opening our gifts. And it was very intimate. When I went to Michigan.
I'm sorry, I gotta stop you. Where in Michigan?
Detroit.
Oh, I grew up north of Flint.
Okay. Well, he probably would know a lot more about the mitten than I do.
Yes,
I
right
in the middle of the mitten.
All right. Where do you live now?
Oh, so we're in South Florida.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we're in South Florida. But when we went up, I'd never been to Michigan before. I'd never been to Detroit. And like I said, I don't even know the mitten, but I know that everyone from Michigan wants to show on the mitten where they are.
Yeah, that's how you know.
That's how you know. But he's got, big family, brothers, and they have wives and they have kids and all these things. And I'm like completely overwhelmed, right? I've never experienced anything like this before. And so when we landed on the plane, and before I had met anybody, I just said, can we go to a music store and can I rent a guitar? Because what I can do is I can get everybody singing Christmas carols together. And that is my comfort zone and how I'm going to meet your family. Because otherwise I really don't know how to fit in. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we did. We went to the local mall before we headed over to their house for Christmas, and we sang Christmas carols together. And I look at that example, and when I see it in my car, on my wall, in my house, wherever my guitar is, I'm reminded of that. I always have that as my connection, something that can always help me connect no matter what situation I'm in. I will never feel uncomfortable if I can use music to bridge that gap.
Everyone needs that. Everyone needs some talisman or some instrument, as it were, to have that comfort. And that's awesome that you have that.
And I never really thought of it in that way till you just mentioned it like that. So that's pretty cool. I will now look at it differently. So
excellent.
That's awesome. Chris, how can people find you, get in touch with you, and keep, in touch with all the awesome stuff that you're doing?
Well, they can go to chrisdtgordon.com. That's where you can find more about me as a speaker. You can download that tag one sheet. You can read some of the articles I've written. I actually have a couple that I have to upload yet. One that was released in a women's magazine earlier this month, and one that's going to be released, I think, by the 20th of November. So I'm very excited about that. And you can also visit my online merch store, the Tag and Pop Shop, Chris D.T. Gordon's Tag and Pop Shop, and everything on there for listeners of both our shows can be 20% off with the promo code TAGPOP1. Awesome. I have one example here. My sweatshirt here. This is
like
so
that.
Comfortable. It has the Tag logo and the explainers up on there. And where's my hat? I got my hat because you don't need this in Florida, but I need this in Minnesota.
Sure.
Especially because I'm follically challenged. And that's all on chrisdtgordon.com. You can also find the YouTube channel, Chris D.T. Gordon, the podcast called Scar Bearers. I also am on Instagram under @Chris D.T. Gordon, and also on LinkedIn.
Beautiful. Perfect. So
now I'm going to extend the question to you. Where can people
find I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So our podcast, as I'm sure that yours is as well, I just always want to first and foremost say thank you, everybody, for listening. And as a way to show gratitude back to us, if you don't mind, our podcasts thrive on ratings and reviews. So if you don't mind, if there is something that you truly enjoyed about this conversation or past conversations on either of our shows, you can't imagine how valuable it is just to drop a little rating and review. And if there's something that you don't like, that's okay too, because I'm sure Chris agrees with me that we always want to be constantly improving. improving every day. And so we were open. I'll say for myself, I'm always open to that, but I have a feeling you feel like-minded in that,
Yes.
that we can always constantly learn from mutual mentorship from our listeners, as we hope they do from us and our guests as well. And my website is mindfulbree.com. We have past podcast episodes there, and also recordings that are available for purchase from a connection boot camp we did last year. It was a live virtual event, but we also have recordings for all the amazing speakers. So that opportunity is still available at the website, mindfulbree.com. On Instagram, it's mindfulmentorbree, and on Facebook, the Mindful Mentor. So please check it out. And I want to thank you, Chris, for extending the offer for my audience as well for the discount on your merchandise. I love everything you are modeling right now. I know this is an audio podcast, so folks can't see it, but they can check it out on your channel. So that's great.
Well, I'm going to actually take a picture of us on here together here. And, I was like doing that. There we go. And I do have one more question though for you, Bree.
Go ahead.
What is your favorite dinosaur?
I love a good Triceratops. They're so cute. They've got like a crown always. And I mean, it's weird because I'm really quite tall and long and lean, and they're like the opposite body type of that. But I just think they're so adorable. So I'm going to go Triceratops.
You can't go wrong with a good trike, I find. So I commend your choice. That's great.
Thank you. Appreciate it. What's your favorite dinosaur?
I have to say Ankylosaurus. And if you're not sure who he is,
I'm definitely not.
It's the little guy with a club tail.
Oh.
Yeah, I just like that, he goes about his business, but he can always defend himself when he needs to. He's
go
to the ground. Yeah, I've always appreciated good.
Wow, he's kind of like an armadillo.
A bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Like an armadillo with a little bit of beaver there, a flap of the tail.
I have absolutely learned something new today. I appreciate that very much.
Oh, definitely. Well, as a teacher, I take it as a compliment.
Yes, as you should, as you should. Well, this is a great idea. A lot of fun, something definitely different. We're getting close to about I think that is my 46 episodes. We're getting close to 50. So I'm loving having something different and new as we get up to that milestone. So thank you, Chris, so much for your time and your energy and your gratitude and positivity. I'm just going to channel that, keep it with me throughout this holiday season.
And Bree, thank you so much for agreeing to this crazy idea of mine and the service you're providing people. I am so thankful for the opportunity to talk with you and learn more about it.
Awesome.
And I hope others take part in it, because I definitely see the benefits of such a practice, because music is so ingrained in our lives that to use it for that purpose, it's almost a no-brainer. It just makes complete sense.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And absolutely. So to you, sir, I am thankful for you.
And I wish you that we all pass on perfection and go for greatness.
Oh, I love it. And I'll finish with take care of yourselves, take care of one another.